Welcome back to the Home-Based Revolution. I'm here with Rachel Marshall.
So we learned a really hard and really terrible lesson.
If there were a couple things that you just wish.
I had a near-death experience. We just had a complete revolution.
And so my commitment level was...
And you made that commitment. You were absolutely all in on that. Then the rest is yours to figure out how you want to spend and use within.
You all can do this too. It's about intention. It's about effort. It's about focus. Hey, you guys. Welcome back to the Home-Based Revolution podcast. I am here with Rachel Marshall, and she is, how long have we known each other or been in each other's spheres?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I just pulled up. You were on our podcast back in 2022. So
oh my
2.5 years ago. I think it was around that time frame. So yeah, about 3-ish years maybe.
That's cool. So, you guys, first of all, what I'm going to say is a term that you likely know, and if you don't know it, you need to listen. You need to listen. Family banking, okay? Family banking is what we're going to be talking about today. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart. It is my entire goal for families is to be independent and to be able to make their own choices. And there's a lot of things that try to take those choices out of our grasp. And this puts them right back in our grasp. So, Rachel, tell these folks about yourself. Just go into who is Rachel? How did Rachel get to be talking about the stuff that she talks about right now?
Awesome. Martha, that's a fabulous question. I love backstories because I think it tells the whole story.
Yep.
So really, I'm an entrepreneur. Husband and I have been in business for about 12 years. And as we were getting started in business, we realized we really needed a place that we could access capital from. So we'd been storing money, and to be totally honest, we were putting money in gold and silver. We thought the markets were crashing. We were like, hey, we need this super long-term protection that we're going to probably never have to touch and use. Except we did need to use it, and except when we did, the market had, dipped in half of what we'd paid for it. So we learned a really hard and really terrible lesson that you need to have access to capital. So we started storing capital in a place that we had a lot more access. And that was just so powerful for us as we started understanding the power of family banking and really saying we can help other people with this as well. There's a whole nother part of my story that is a really big piece of who I am that I'm just going to tickle and share it with a tiny bit, and we'll dig into that in a future episode probably. But then after we've got all the financial component really working well and we're helping other people with infinite banking and really being able to take control of their financial life, I had a near-death experience. And so this was actually after we met, or before we met, but this was in 2019. And because of that, we just had a complete revolution in the way that we think about family, about making sure that family is protected, and about making sure that we're investing in our legacy for the long term. And it's not just financial, it's really the pieces that are intangibles, the values and the family culture and the meaning and all the things that you want them to do, your kids to do with the financial resources. And so that's a whole other piece of the work that we do.
Yeah, oh, I love it. And it fits so nicely. It's unfortunate that it had to come on the tail end of, or that what had to wake you up to that. But I think it's so interesting in our lives that things like that happen. And sometimes people are unable to pull the gold out of tragedy, mm-hmm. right? It's like, sometimes we don't look at it enough to actually be able to pull out of it something that can help other people moving forward. And I'm not saying that things are different, mm-hmm. but I'm so glad that you were able to not have that happen, but be able to pull out of it what you pulled out of it.
Absolutely. And honestly, I look back at the situation and just say, I'm so thankful for that situation. Yeah. It made us so much better. It changed our lives in such a powerful, profound way. And the beautiful thing is that if we allow those devastating circumstances to mold us and we get the lesson instead of just the pain out of that, there can just be so much joy and triumph on the other side. So
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so for the people who don't know what family banking is, let us have it.
Yes. Okay. So family banking, there's many other terms around this. You might have heard infinite banking. You might have heard cash flow banking. The idea really is, how do you have a place to store capital? This is storing cash. This is storing money that you can access and use. And really what I'll contrast that with is, like we were putting money in gold and silver, a lot of people put money in the stock market. You have a lot of components or attributes of money. You have safety, liquidity, growth. You can get some of those, but not all of them in any asset. And so a lot of times people will say, well, I'm storing money, I'm preparing for retirement, I'm putting this money over in the stock market. Well, that's not very safe, right? Because it can lose value. And you can say, well, I've got a bunch of money here. I've even got $2 million sitting aside in this account. The problem is, if it drops in value, you really don't have $2 million.
Yeah.
So safety is something that you really want to think about in terms of family banking. Family banking is really a way to store money that's safe and it's liquid, so you can access and use it. And I call it like touch and take money. So it's not something that you're just storing somewhere and there's no exit strategy. This is money and capital that you can access and use for the purpose of investing in your family. And specifically on that idea of family banking, you can even think about a pool of cash that you're putting into for the family. You can even have family members, even as young as your kids, who are saying, hey mom, I've got a business idea. I need money. Maybe I want $200 and I need to buy some equipment to start a new business. Well, that capital they can then request from the family bank. Then that can be a loan that they are repaying. And as they're repaying from the profitability of whatever they've borrowed out for, now you have a growing pool of capital that can be used for something else. And so it's this idea of a pool of cash or a place you're storing money that's for the purpose of investing in family members, investing in opportunities so that you can then have this growing family wealth, this growing family resource.
I love that. I love that. So what are some benefits that people may not realize about family banking? Because I think some people might be listening to this and be like, well, that sounds like that could just be my checking account. Mm-hmm. And I just, I loan my kids money out of my checking account, so I don't really need to do anything there. So like tell me more, like, to somebody who would say that.
Yes. Okay. So that is a very good question. And often we get those types of questions. Like, what about I'm storing money in the equity in my home, right? I'm paying off the loan and now equity is growing. Well, because I have equity, I can borrow from that, right? I can use that cash. Sure. That's a location you could store capital in the equity of your home. You could use a stock account or a margin account on a stock portfolio. You could access that capital. But when you're looking all around at all of the various attributes to where you can store cash, we've actually found one place that rises head and shoulders above all the rest that is the best place to store cash for the purpose of family banking. And certainly people are using the concept of banking by storing capital somewhere, borrowing from it, or taking money out and then repaying and keeping this pool of cash growing, right? And you can do that, yes, with a checking account, with a CD, with a savings account. You can do it with a lot of different tools. But we found actually using specially designed whole life insurance with a mutual company, with a dividend paying policy, a policy that focuses on high early cash value accumulation. And I'm throwing out a bunch of terms right now, but it's a very specific type of whole life insurance. It's not just a typical run of the mill whole life insurance policy, and it's certainly not universal life or variable life or indexed universal life. So really using a specially designed whole life insurance policy, we can go into why and all of that if you want, but that gives you a lot of opportunity. One, that gives you a lot of guarantees. You know your cash value is never going to drop in value. You know you're going to have dividends being paid, or you don't know. That's a non-guaranteed but a highly likely thing that will happen. And those dividends are being adding to your cash value. Then you have this death benefit that you know is going to pay out when you pass away. And I think one of the most amazing things about using whole life insurance in this way is that you have the tool then to grow this cash at the point that you have the worst life event ever happen to you. You know that that's going to be a financial win for your family.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like morbid to think about, but also we all need to think about that. Like
Absolutely.
it's like the thing that nobody wants to go get their will written. Nobody wants to like do this stuff because I don't know. I think it's either one where they're like, oh, it won't be I won't need that for a while.
Yep.
Or two, I don't want to talk about that. Right. But I love just, by proxy, by the way, in doing this, you're naturally already setting your loved ones up for success when something happens. Let's use the word when, because we're humans.
Yes.
And
Oh,
does.
absolutely. And you're so intuitive to even use that word. I think so many times people, including myself, say, we're setting this up for if something happens. And the real truth is it's not an if event. We all know we're going to pass away at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I say this to every person I talk to. I hope that's going to be when you are age 120 and a few months. Like it's going to be a long, long, long ways out. But any time along that continuum from now until the end of human life expectancy for the longest living person on earth, we know that at some point we are going to not be here anymore. And what we want to do is not leave a financial hole or a financial burden for our family if we can be in a position of throwing additional capital into the next generation. At that point, it's just so powerful and profound of a tool. And I think this hits another reason why people sometimes don't do this type of planning is they're like, well, I've worked really hard to get where I'm at. I want my kids to work really hard too. I don't really want to just give them a bunch of money. I don't want to put them in a position where they don't have to develop that character and stewardship and discipline to figure out their unique ability, to figure out their gifting, to figure out business and serving other people. And really what I say to that is that how much more powerful would it be if you didn't veer away from giving money and shy away from that, but instead recognize that money is just a tool. It's amoral. It's not good or bad. But if you can train your kids with the discipline, the stewardship, the character, and then also give them this financial resource to jumpstart and propel them further along this amazing trajectory that you've already put them on, how much more powerful then, how much greater of impact could they have? How amazing would it be if they looked back, if your great-great-grandkids looked back and said, great-great-grandma and grandpa had me on their mind. I wasn't even born yet, and they were doing all these things to help set me up for success. I mean, how powerful and how affirming would that be?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. What are some things that you wish everyone knew? Hard stop. End of sentence. What are a couple of things, and it doesn't matter what it's about, because you go into family legacy, we're talking about family banking, just of like Rachel in her mind, if there were a couple things that you just wish that everyone knew or everyone understood, what would be those two things?
I think number one, and we're just going to go back into family legacy for a minute. Number one, I wish that everyone would explore the power of whole life insurance, because I think a lot of times we have the things that you said earlier, it's not going to happen to me, so I don't really want to think about it, or it's just scary to think about mortality, or a lot of people have heard negative stuff about life insurance as well, and unfortunately there can be opinions that are not really well founded with a lot of not information, that we just hear a negative slur about something and all of a sudden we're like, oh, I guess it's a bad idea. And the challenge is that causes people not to really think or to really research or to really seek to understand. And so I really wish that people would be able to just set that aside for one moment and say, let me look into what the merits and the validity of this product that's been around for longer than any other financial tool that we think about. It's longer than the 401k. It's been around for multiple centuries, and people have been using this product for a long time. Why? Why are financial companies?
Well, and even like why would what benefit does it have for folks to be knocking it down, right? So like we're like, as critical thinkers, we really need to like stop listening to folks and saying, okay, that must be true. Instead, like listening to tear apart, right? Mm-hmm. So why would these people say this? Why would these people? And then usually you can find a way back to why they would say it, which we don't need to get into right now. But
exactly. Exactly. But usually it has some motivation to say, oh, well, buy this instead, or
Yeah.
do this other thing instead that benefits them. And
Yeah,
so if you just
exactly.
follow the financial trail, often that's the case. Which, anyway, so I just wish that people would dig into seeking to understand the value and the merits of this long-standing product that has so much guarantees and security and safety. So that's number one. Number two, I would just really encourage people to say money or family. Family is designed to be this long-term family line, this trajectory that you have influence on people far beyond you in your family line, and you have a lot of power to be able to make changes and make a difference for them in the future. And the reason that recognizing that is so important is that you really have the ability to make changes that are not just going to benefit you, not just put you in a better financial position so you can have a nicer house or a nicer boat or a better, cushier lifestyle today, but really for the purpose of creating generational assets and generational wealth that can benefit
Yeah.
generations, and then really just have influence, have your family be able to have influence.
I love that. I love that. So you guys have just, I love that. First of all, I love that you, first of all, we're halfway through and I say, first of all, that's, that's just,
That's awesome.
that's me. But I love that you work with your husband, because I work with my husband too. Actually, if you heard a noise a minute ago, he opened the door on accident. He didn't realize I was in here doing this.
Awesome.
And the door sticks, and then he looked and he backed out. But I love that you work with your husband, and that it really is a family business and a family mission, and that's a really cool thing for our kids to see. So, well, I'll ask you what most people ask me, which is like, how is it working with your husband?
That is an amazing question. I feel like there's so much value in working with spouses. My husband also just walked right in the room, so he's like 6 feet away from me here.
See, it happens.
So what's amazing about building a business together with a spouse is, I mean, just at first blush, I always say to people, you can choose to grow in life, or you can choose to stay the same, and really staying the same means you're going backwards. But there's two things that have made me grow more than anything else in the world. Well, actually three. One was getting married, two was having kids, and three was choosing to go into business, and specifically business with a spouse, because that brings up all of these things that you probably could just not address in your marriage if you didn't go into business. Things like communication styles and who's being the leader and how you're executing and who's the CEO, who's following directions. Are you following directions? Are you trying to have two CEOs? I mean, there's just so much that happens with a husband and wife team that I think if you can sort those things and build a successful business with your spouse, there is so much value and just beauty that you have as a result of what you build together, because you're actually building something. And I think that's often lost in family, this idea that family is for a mission, for a purpose. There is a reason why you exist together as a family, and it's not just for the purpose of having a nice friend and a home to retreat into, but really having a home and a family that's on mission, that you're accomplishing something, you're moving the marker forward on an economic front, a spiritual front. You have a spiritual mission. God's calling you to do something as a family, and having an economic driver or an engine that is behind that allows you to have so much more impact for the kingdom.
I love it. Ooh, girl, I already know that's going to be one of the reels that comes out of this. I'm sitting there trying not to make a lot of noise, and I'm like, girl, just let her go, because it's going to be one.
That's awesome.
I love it. I wish more people felt like they could actually do it, like it could actually be real for them. I think that people look at us and they think, well, there's something in their DNA that is different than me. And I don't know about you, Rachel. For me, not the case, right? Mm-hmm. Like I went to college for one semester, and that's how I knew I didn't want to go to college, right? I was in restaurants for a really long time. Shout out to all the restaurant workers. 14 years. That is
wow.
Yeah, it's like boot camp for anticipating needs. I think it creates the best business owners, like if they actually see it through. But like what I'm trying to say is, anybody listening right now, you all can do this too. It's about intention. It's about effort. It's about focus. And it's about saying, we're doing this thing, win, lose, or draw. And so like commit to it. I think we have an epidemic of non-committalness going on, where people, they like an idea and they start to do it a little bit, and then they're like, well, I'll just go do something else instead. What are your thoughts?
Listen, okay, so I'm just gonna rant on that for a minute, because I think if we really get to the core of marriage, even, we look at an epidemic of divorce. We look at an epidemic of people saying, I'm going to try it for a little bit, and if it gets too hard or I find something better, I'm just going to be out. And so they think of family or marriage as, well, this is kind of optional and I'm going to check it out and see. Well, then what happens when you build a family and you have kids in the mix? And now the challenge is you can't build anything long lasting, a long-term family line. You can't have great impact and influence on multiple generations past you if you're kind of in on family. And if you're going to be kind of in on anything, you'll never create anything worth talking about, or anything worth loving, or anything worth building for the long term. And so really what you're saying about being committed, you've got to be committed to family. You've got to be committed to yourself and your own goals. You've got to be committed to your kids. You've got to be committed to God. You've got to be committed to the business that you're building. And I tell you what, even if it doesn't turn out the way that you had planned in business, that learning can create the fodder or the lesson plan for the next business that you're going to start, or the next venture. It's not a, let me dabble for a little bit. It really does need to be all in, because everything worth creating in life, you had to go all in the beginning.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I even have like a scary thing that I'll share. Whenever I quit my job at GoDaddy, I had no safety net whatsoever, right? We had Nora. She had just, like, the reason I quit is because I got a video of Nora taking her first steps while I was at work, right? And it was just floored me. And I was like, nope, not doing this anymore. I'm not going to miss all of this stuff. And the thing is I had already brought Mike home from work because I was making really good money at GoDaddy. And my in-laws had just moved in with us. We bought a really expensive house to be able to accommodate two families, different floors, different kitchens, different all of that. And I held the insurance on the family, and I was the main breadwinner for all of it, right? And it reminds me of like Mama's Family, except I was like the main breadwinner person. And I've never said that, so maybe I shouldn't again. But basically, whenever I quit, it was like, oh my gosh, you have to make something work, because there was no safety net. Mm-hmm. And so my commitment level was through the roof, because there were no other options for me. It was what it was. I had to make something go. And I try to get people, I don't want people to throw themselves out the window like I threw myself out the window, but I know it was the most valuable thing for me, because if I had a safety net, if we have safety nets, we use them. Mm-hmm. End of sentence. And so if I had had a safety net at that point in time, I would have been like, I'll try this, I'll try that, and maybe never really gotten anywhere. But I had to make something anchor in, and so I did what it took in order to do that. Now, I don't want people to throw themselves out the window, like I said, but I do try to get people to like play mind games with themselves, mm-hmm. Where you're just like, make yourself believe you have to do this. Put something in front of you that makes you double down and really just like, you know what I'm saying? Have you ever done that?
Absolutely. And honestly, I mean, this is a smaller scale, but I'm going to actually just relate that back to family banking, because I think this would be really helpful. I think often what happens with the idea of money and financial management is people say, well, I'm going to go ahead and make the money, then I'm going to spend what I need to spend or what I want to spend, and when it's all said and done, at the end of the month, if I have something left over, I'll save that or I'll invest that. And the challenge with that is it's non-committal, right? It's optional. It's a tack on at the end. It's an, oh, by the way, maybe this will happen. The challenge is that if you're going to build a financial future for yourself, it's not just income based. It's really based on how you manage that income that you have. And one of the ways to really manage it proactively is to say, let me pay myself first. in the words of, I don't know if you're familiar with Richest Man in Babylon. It's a book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Love that book. So
Yeah.
he says, pay yourself first. Mike Michalowicz calls it profit first. So in the business model, he says, put your profit account to the side first before you have your expense accounts and all the other things that come out. What that means is you make the money, you save first, and then after you save and you've made that commitment, you are absolutely all in on that, then the rest is yours to figure out how you want to spend and use within the business. So the idea then that somebody says, if I am going to now get started with infinite banking, right? Well, that can be a scary commitment. This is like I'm marrying this idea of putting cash aside into this policy on an ongoing basis for many years in the future. That can feel a little much, as you're saying, well, what if I don't have the income 3 years from now? Or what if my life changes? Or what if my circumstance shifts and I'm in a situation where now I find myself feeling a little pinched by making that premium payment? Well, the challenge really is at the very beginning, being committed to saying, I'm going to build this banking system. I'm going to store capital so that we have this growing access to cash. Because the more cash you have access to, the more opportunity finds you. It's called opportunity seeks liquidity, or opportunity finds cash. If you have no cash sitting on the side, you're not going to have investment opportunities arise that would be great for you, because you're not even looking for those kind of things. You're looking instead at, how do I spend this money, or how do I, pay off debt, or how do I make a different kind of decision? But if you're looking for opportunities to advance your financial standing, those come when you have cash to be able to put in them. So setting yourself up with that commitment to save first, and then even locking yourself into something that is a long-term commitment that says, I do want to put as much cash into this storage tank as possible for as long as possible. That really gives you that same kind of power as clearing the stops and making sure you don't have the safety net. It's like preventing yourself from having a way out. And I mean, I don't want to scare anyone too much either. When you do that, even with a whole life insurance policy, there's so many options for how to make premium payments or how to adjust things. There's flexibility within the way the contract is built if you do run into hard times or a down month or a down year or things like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that we're going into the details of it so people don't immediately say, nope, I can't. And it's important to know the ins and outs. And that's why I love you guys talking about it specifically, because you're trustworthy, like it's safe. It's like a safe bet on yourself whenever you can work with somebody else who's so trustworthy, that share the same values that you do. Oh my word, here go literally my dog's barking right now. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that or not.
I can, yeah. I'm good now.
Work at home mom. Here's what we do. My kid walked in and told me that she did the laundry and the dishes.
Listen, you're training some chores really well then. That's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Because she's gonna get paid for that. Because
awesome.
This is her time clock.
Love it.
But yeah, I love that you guys are working with people in this capacity, and didn't just, you could have learned this stuff for yourself and said, okay, we're good, and then not turned around and helped other families just like yourself. Because I don't see a lot of families like us with our same values and like ministries, missions, that sort of thing, that are in this space necessarily. And maybe it's just I have a blindness to it, but I don't see it. And so I'm really glad that you guys have stepped up to the plate to be able to serve in this way.
I think it's profoundly important to be able to share our gifts with others. And I think it can be really easy to say, oh, I don't want to share that, or it's too overwhelming, or it's too challenging, or maybe no one's going to listen. But I think that really, God leads us through life circumstances so that we can not just grow personally, but so that we can be a leader for other people to find themselves out of and lead them out of whatever situation they found themselves in that was the same as ours. So I think what's really powerful is that you mentioned just being trustworthy. I think it's so valuable to understand how something works and be able to share that, not just only the pretty parts of it and not the flashy parts only, and being over markety and over salesy. And I think that's one of the things that has been said most often about Bruce and I, as Bruce is our business partner. We do a podcast together called The Money Advantage, and we talk about life insurance, we talk about finances all the time. And I think the number one thing people say is just that you guys are educators. We're teaching, we're helping people really understand, and sometimes to like more depth than someone would really want to understand, and really diving into those details, because it's really important to us that people don't feel oversold, or they don't feel like, oh, it just was too good to be true, so I jumped into this thing. And really what's so interesting is I think all the people who are ultimately successful are the ones who are in it for the long haul. They're the ones who are not looking for the flashy get rich quick thing. They're not looking for overnight success. They're not looking for just how do I have the most attractive thing right up front. They're really saying, how do I have the right fundamentals? How do I do things right? How do I build this deep and long term? And as soon as you start thinking from that perspective and thinking about how you can build what's correct for the long term, and you're building as deep as possible, you're in a position that you're just thinking totally different. And so, I mean, this is even kind of back to what you said, if I could just kind of implant one thing in someone's mind, I'm going to throw a third thing into that. It's the art, really, of thinking long term. I think so often we just think about what's immediately in front of us. We want the quick high rate of return on something. We want to pay off that debt tomorrow. We want $1 million in the bank. We want, the things that we think are going to be the really quick solution. And really what we need to be thinking about is, what would be the best decision I could possibly make for 50 years from now, or for 100 years from now.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, I know that there are a few different things that you have. What do you think would be best to link up in the show notes to give people here? I know that there's a few different things, but based on this conversation, what do you feel like is the next step for folks?
Absolutely great question. So I'm going to give several, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So the easiest next step for anybody would be a quiz that we have, and that is easy to go to at 7generationslegacy.com/quiz. Free resource, and this is really just to assess your current legacy planning in terms of what you have in place for just leaving a legacy that will impact and benefit your kids and grandkids. So that's super easy, no cost at all. I'm also going to share with you a link to our book. So this is, mine's all marked up and highlighted and stickers and everything, but this is 7 Generations Legacy. We're selling this for $4.99. So $4.99, super low cost. You get a digital book, you get an audio book, and then there's a bunch of bonuses that come with that. And one of them helps you understand more about infinite banking. So I just wanted to throw that out there in terms of just being able to just get resources in your hands that are really going to help move the needle forward. If you're looking at anything to do with legacy planning, if you are really wanting to benefit your kids and grandkids, there's a whole bunch in this book about family banking, but it's not the main thrust and force of the book, if you will. So it's not just about that. You'll have to kind of go towards the back to get all that meat, but it is packed in the book as well. And so just really a really healthy introduction to why you would use this tool. And I think that's going to be probably the best two start points for somebody who's really looking to get more information on legacy and on family banking.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on. Before we came on, I was already like, okay, so you're going to come on again in the future. I already knew before, but thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on. And then what's your podcast again, so they can come to yours?
Yeah, so that's themoneyadvantage.com or themoneyadvantage.com. And I think we've got about 8 years of content on that so far. So if you start listening, you can go back as many episodes as you want and binge on all of that. But just a lot of tools on finance and just really how to keep and control and manage more of your money. There's a lot of information on infinite banking and family banking there as well. So good. So good. Thank you again for coming here. Thanks for doing what you're doing. And then we're going to see you again next time, okay? Awesome. Yay. Thank you, Martha. This has been great. Appreciate you a lot. You got it. We'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.